It's not the body, it's the identity. What's up, Active Lifers? Welcome back to the Active Life Podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Pastuch. I'm your host. Today's guest is Dr. Craig Liebenson, the founder of First Principles of Movement seminars, a chiropractor for almost 40 years, and one of the first people I ever learned from by reading his textbook about how to use corrective exercise to start to influence the way that somebody feels and performs. What's interesting about that is that you'll hear on the podcast, Dr. Liebenson no longer believes in corrective exercise in the way that he once did and wrote textbooks about it. What I found most refreshing from this conversation is how forward-thinking Dr. Liebenson is, how much he and I are actually aligned in ways I didn't know that we were, which makes me feel more validated in my thoughts to have somebody who's as esteemed as him thinking in a similar path. And he talks about how to teach people without teaching people, the idea that to correct is incorrect. I think you're going to find this podcast fascinating. Before I get you to it, please remember, if you like the show, leave us that 5-star rating, write us a review, share it with a friend. Share that well. Let's get to Dr. Craig Liebenson. Dr. Craig Liebenson, welcome to the Active Life Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. You definitely don't know this, but I started studying your work while I was in chiropractic school back in 2006, 2007, 2008. That's when I first started hearing your name. That's when I first started thinking about, I'm in chiropractic school, right? And so the core differentiating factor for a chiropractor is what? We can adjust. And so that becomes the thing that in chiropractic school, everybody is learning how to do with a high level of skill. I'll put high level in air quotes, and we can, we don't need to parse out who's good and who's not. You find that, by the way, for those of you wondering, I'm sure you had a similar experience. You find out if you're good or not the day that they say we're going to practice cervical adjustments, find a partner, and nobody wants to partner with you, or everybody wants to partner with you. But I started studying your stuff back then because I was a personal trainer first. And so I was like, there's got to be something to exercise and movement here that we're not discussing. And that's when I came on your book the first time. And so what I want to start off by asking you is effectively, why do we need to change direction in the way that musculoskeletal healthcare is considered today in 2023?
What a great question. Why do we need to change our healthcare today, our direction today? As a chiropractor, since you're talking about chiropractic, there are people with stone hands and you never want them to touch you. And I think the biggest thing, and yes, chiro is hands, but the biggest thing is connection. And what we've lost is we lost connection with people's identity. We need to get back to listening to people's story. We need to identify what it is that people are chasing. It's not about us. It's not about chiropractic or physiotherapy or personal training. What we want to get back to is what are people searching for? Everybody is seeking something. Most people think that they want an adjustment if they're seeing a chiro. Most people think they need laser or dry needling if they're seeing a physiotherapist. But the reality is a good physiotherapist or chiropractor is going to ask people what their goals are. And we need to get back to people's story, and then the methods will serve the goals. So it's about it's truly person-centered. That's what's missing. That's the revolution. And everything is against that revolution because people get paid for services, for transactionalism. And yet what's most valuable is listening and people feeling heard. And then we'll be off to the races after that.
What I find inspiring about what you just said is I've been saying for years, there's no reason for us to have chiropractic and physical therapy as separate professions. They should be agnostically providing the patient with what the patient needs to achieve what the patient says they want after we've asked, just to be clear, this is what you're saying you want to accomplish. Yes. And then help them refine that. Right? Like part of our goal, I think, as the clinician or even as the trainer is to help the patient/client refine what it is that they're saying that they want, because they only know how to ask for what they understand in the moment. And people are going to come in with self-limiting narratives around what they think is possible. our job oftentimes is to open their minds to what else is possible. And if we move away from I adjust, you give exercises and stretches, you do stim, you massage, to what does this person need? We're exponentially more valuable. So do you believe, instead of giving you a binary, how do you think we got into the position of our industry going towards a fee for service that is not in the best interests of the patient?
Well, I think the human appetite is for a quick fix, and as a chiropractor, we serve an incredible, we provide a value, but today's society, we have so many lifestyle related issues that really weren't the issue before, like at chiropractic's, heyday, being in the Midwest, let's say, farmer, back pain. Obviously medicine wasn't the answer. And even after that period of time, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s with the opiate crisis, we know that our system is driving people to want things that aren't really what they need. And so the redirect is about sitting with people, and maybe to best share with you my thoughts, because I love that question. I can think of the pandemic and how the pandemic forced us to hit pause. And out of the midst of all of this chaos and challenge was the ability to connect with people. If I go back to connecting with people as a goal, connecting with people on a very human level, which when they're in our office, there's a tyranny of the visit, there's a tyranny of the clinic based on what you said, their expectation. But when we're seeing somebody in telehealth or doing online coaching or virtual coaching, now we get to talk with a person, we get to listen to the person and hear their story. And now it's a whole different relationship. We're finally really beginning to understand what they're chasing, what they value, and what matters to them. So if I could summarize, I want to determine what matters to a person. I want to measure it. I want to create a measurable so that we can have an outcome. And I want to create a program that actually will help achieve that. And more often than not, what I ask people when they're expecting an adjustment or a massage or some modality is I ask them, what their goal is, number one. But number two, I ask them, what are you doing to achieve that goal? So if their goal is to run without knee pain, are they training for the game? And inevitably they're not. Mm-hmm. Inevitably they're chasing fitness, and they don't know that there's a biomechanical KPI for single leg load tolerance. And then we can start to talk about programming and training them for the game and get to the why behind the what.
What's interesting about what you just said there, there was a lot, but the number one thing that I caught on to there was people forget why they're doing the thing that they started to do. And then they come in with the wrong question. So that, the question that they'll come in with is, can you help me get rid of my knee pain? That's what will happen oftentimes. They'll say, when I go running, my knee hurts. Now, you have developed the kind of clinical ear and empathy for the patient to be able to ask, why does it matter that your knee hurts? What is that getting in the way of? I know you're not here because your knee hurts, because your knee didn't start hurting this morning and then you called and booked an appointment. It probably hurt for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. And then you were finally like, all right, I'm going to go see Liebenson. I'll finally do the thing, right? So what changed? I imagine that's part of what's going through your mind when you're asking the question. I believe too often people will come in, say my knee hurts when I run, without using the specific language of, and I would like to be able to run. So can you help me eliminate my knee pain so that I can run? And so what the doctor ends up doing is saying, oh, well, then let's just find something you can do instead of running. Problem solved. And people end up in this small box, right? I'm sure you've seen that walk into your clinic before.
There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than being told, oh, you're 50, you have wear and tear, you need to stop running. Mm-hmm. And then people will chase the quick fix, and they'll spend tens of thousands of dollars between the orthotics and the K-tape and the modalities, and everybody is just administering to them. They're they're passive and they have no agency whatsoever.
Yeah.
But really, I never want to invalidate what they think they need. What I want to do is I want to broaden it. So we may have to begin by acknowledging what they're expecting and use that as a starting point. But then we want to broaden it out. We want to start to gain their trust. When we have their trust, then we can begin to talk about the fact that these problems tend to recur, which isn't going to shock them. And why don't we get upstream of the problem? And people love hearing that, as opposed to us just treating the symptom. And people love hearing that too. So yeah, they're there for relief, and they have a life and they're busy. But if we start to use certain key terms, then we're validating them, but we're also inspiring them and giving them agency and empowering them at the same time.
So I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because I imagine you've been practicing probably close to 40 years now. Yes?
It's scary to think about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't compute.
We'll never talk about that again. Okay. We'll never talk about the time spent. I'm just kidding. Do you think that, I'm curious how much you believe, because of your reputation, because of your time under tension, that you're able to influence a patient who walks into your door as a result of the stack of evidence that what you have done works, as compared to a younger doc, a younger trainer, a client/patient comes to them and they say the same thing that you would say, but it doesn't carry the same weight. I'm curious if you think that there's any efficacy to that.
I don't think it has anything to do with anything that people in the profession or in this space know about my body of work or contributions. But I do think that patients give more leeway if they've been referred by somebody who you helped. So that's why I think young people really, if they want to grease things, they need to make it easier for people to get to them, whether it's fee or whatever. They need to treat family for, and then, friends for free, because it's going to go through word of mouth. In chiropractic, one of the great business minds was Parker, the original founder of the Parker University, Parker College of Chiropractic. And it's about meeting people. It's about getting to know people and getting people in the door. And then word will spread. And that's where the credibility comes in. When people realize that you've helped somebody that they know. If you want to work with golfers and you've helped one golfer, that's going to give you cred.
Well, I think if you want to help golfers, you better be playing golf.
Possibly,
right? But
not like me though.
No, but if you're there's a lot of docs out there who are like, look, I want to specialize in golfers, and it's, well, why? And then when you ask the question, the answer ends up coming out like, oh, well, they have time, they have money, they have issues. It's like, well, hold on a second. Do you know what it's like to play a round of golf? Yeah, I've played before. Okay, but can you empathize with the problems that they're having before they go to the course, while they're on the 16th hole or the 13th hole, when they've finished and they're in the bar thinking about the round that they just, can you do that? No. Well, then you only understand the musculoskeletal component of the person, and it will never manifest into a successful practice because you don't understand the full person. That's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's real important to be able to speak the language, so if you're working with surfers, it's going to be one type of language. If you're with a CEO, it's a different type of language. And to be able to connect with people from different walks of life and different backgrounds is a real talent and a gift. And that's more important than having, manual skills, let's say. The soft skills are the most important thing. And gaining that trust, being able to connect with people, listening to people's, again, I keep going back to this, but listening to people's story. People come in to see me and they go, let me give you the quick version. And I go, that's why we have an hour and a half today. I want to hear everything.
So when
and you learn some things, and it unspools. I don't even get it all the first visit, until we start to get them moving. There's an Aboriginal tale about how our past is buried in our body. And so we get to do a form of mind-body medicine or holistic care that psychologists don't get to do, because we're working with the body. And it's through the body that people's beliefs and behaviors get intertwined. And when you talk about pain, which is subjective, this stuff is a knot, and not the knot that we're going to palpate. It's a different form of a knot. And this concept of reconceptualization of people's feeling of being broken and injured and needing somebody to fix them, that really gets to the on-ramp that we're talking about.
You mentioned a 90-minute visit. I imagine you're not taking insurance on a 90-minute visit. Is that correct?
We'll give a super bill.
Okay. So for people who don't know what a super bill is, what that means is the patient comes in, pays cash to your clinic, and then the super bill is so that they can present that to their insurance company for whatever reimbursement the insurance company is prepared to provide them.
Correct. I think you could say that we work more like a coach or a trainer.
Yeah.
So it's a cash service, but because we have a professional identity as a licensed healthcare professional, there is the possibility for some third-party reimbursement. Ryan Chow in New York, who a lot of his patients are cash, and a lot of them have insurance. And so it depends. And he spends 2 hours.
Yeah. Well,
I only spend 90 minutes.
Well, he's young. He's got to grow, Dr. Liebenson. Then he'll be able to efficiency regulate his time.
I usually need more than 90 minutes.
I know.
90 isn't enough.
Well, the reason why I wanted to parse that part out is because when you were discussing the fee for service that we run, and for people who are unaware, the way that a doctor would bill insurance is with codes, and the codes usually, almost always, represent time. The only time that's not the case is when one of the codes represents a very specific technique, as a for example. And that technique might be an adjustment, which is not a time thing. But once you get into modalities, you're talking about, was this a 15-minute spend with the patient? If it was 15 minutes, we'll pay you $27 for that. And then it's a game that doctors find themselves playing, where it's how many modalities can I work in? Did I do it for 8 minutes or more? All of this nonsense, because 8 minutes is 15 minutes. There's no way you're going to get to an hour and a half long visit and get paid for an hour and a half of time. And even if you were, they're not paying enough for the minutes for you to have a successful business doing that. That's why I asked the question. And so my question to you to follow that is, how do you speak to the person who's listening right now, who's not local to Dr. Craig Liebenson, but does have someone in their local market who does not take their insurance, but comes higher recommended than everybody in their market who does? How do they justify going to the person who they're going to spend cash to when this other person will happily take their insurance?
Well, that's easy. We're investing in our future. So what we do today will determine our health in 10 years. And like Peter Attia says, if you want to be above average at 90, you need to be above average at 50. And think about a 90-year-old. A 90-year-old, the average 90-year-old is either 6 feet under, or they're in they've lost their independence. They're in assisted living. And so to be above average 50 would mean something very simple, meeting the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines. So that's the on-ramp. And that has nothing to do with cortisone shots or surgery or acupuncture, dry needling, or chiropractic. That has to do with gaining confidence. And everybody is making people feel sick. We have a negative healthcare system. But the reason is because of your other question. The reason is because that's what people get reimbursed for. Orthopedists get reimbursed for invasive procedures, interventionism. So you do a shot, you get paid. You do a surgery, you get paid. And so the whole system is driven towards treating disease, not promoting health. Every service in our healthcare system is a fix-it or palliative service, not a supportive one, not one that gives agency. So, we've made the full pivot. Like we've completely disrupted our industry because we're talking about being like Alfred, not like Batman. We want to guide by the side. And it does take not only time in the visit, it also takes time in between visits. So I refer to myself as concierge. So looping this to your other question, what are people paying for? They're paying for concierge, they're paying for support because the communication between sessions is key because we're not fixing things. Things will recur. And we need to be there for people to provide booster shots and to help them with flares. I don't feel comfortable when a person feels better until they've had a flare.
Yes.
Because they'll be broadsided by the flare because they think I cured them.
Yeah. So two things I want to clarify for people. When you say booster shot, you say it figuratively. It's the continuation of the accelerant of care, if you will, after they've finished their initial course. It's not done. You're in a state of being pain-free. You're not in a state of being resolved of the things that led to the pain in the first place until you've done these things consistently for a long enough period of time that you have some durability to what would have previously caused injury.
That's the magic word. That's the magic word. Resilience. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want people waiting till they have acute crises and running to the ER. We want to help people be more resilient, and that's through empowering self-management, where people realize that these things will run a course. A diabetic isn't left on their own by doctors. They know that they're going to come back. And musculoskeletal pain is the most common source of disability in the world. And in a world where people are living 2 or 3 decades longer than 100 years ago, what we've lost health span. We've gained lifespan, but we've lost health span. We're actually older, younger, because if we look around, 30-year-olds today are overweight and pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
So,
kids
are sedentary.
Kids are. That's the scary thing for me.
Kids, we have adult onset diabetes in kids. We have childhood obesity. At every decade, we're less healthy than before. And what fools us is we see that we're living longer. Lifespan is longer, but that doesn't jive with health span being longer.
No, it doesn't. The other thing you said that got me out of my chair was you're not done until you've had a flare, and I've seen you recover from it. We tell our clients this all the time at Active Life. Here's the deal. You're going to work with us because right now you're dealing with some discomfort and you'd like to feel better. We're going to help you feel better. As soon as you feel better, you're going to think you're done. You have only just started when you start feeling better, because once you start feeling better, what is the inclination? To run more, to lift heavier, to play more often, to do all the things that previously you were safeguarding yourself from. Well, that's a spike in activity that you may or may not be ready for at the rate that you're doing it. That's fine. We want you to love and live your life. We need you to have a setback so that you can recover from the setback, because in the future, when you're not under our care regularly, you're going to have a setback, and you can't be dependent on us to tell you that you're not dying when that happens. You need to know what to do.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. I love that. You're promoting independence.
100%. We want
self-efficacy and confidence.
Yes. We want to be a fireable party. And not such that you cancel us from your life. We're always available to our clients after they're outside of our care. But for us, it's like, if you feel like you need to come to us for the rest of your life, then what have we done? We've just replaced one dependency with another and gotten paid for it. That's not what we want to do.
Well, I want to guide by the side, and I see my role more as a positive health coach. And so there are these subtle nuances where for me, I very much believe that through the entire lifespan, people need coaches. Mm-hmm. They need to have somebody by their side. 70-year-olds are going to have issues with balance. We're trying to keep people doing their pickleball, their golf, their tennis, their running. And unless we're continuously updating our programs, then what's going to happen is pain is going to intervene. And then people are going to listen to the cultural, social norms that we have today. and they're going to do exactly what you said before, Sean. They're going to stop. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm too old for that." Mm-hmm. And we want to keep people in the hunt as long as possible. And they're not alone. They're absolutely not alone.
You mentioned that you have a lot of work that you do between the visits. What does that look like?
Texting.
So are you just sitting on your phone all day long texting with people?
No. Ryan taught me Ryan Chow taught me a very simple lesson. If it's more than a 1 or 2 line response, then we suggest that they come in for us to reevaluate and to discuss.
I love that.
So if I get a two paragraph, dump from somebody, obviously I'm going to say, let's discuss this in person.
Yeah.
Or on telehealth or, FaceTime. But if it's something very simple, I'm there for people. And I tell people on day one, I want to hear from you tomorrow, good, bad, or ugly.
Mm-hmm. The way I like to think of, like, I've been on both sides of that as the practitioner, where I've thought it feels selfish to ask them to come back in. And I've had good mentors teach me, you can't answer their question in a thorough enough manner without them coming in. So what you believe, Sean, is the more altruistic, empathetic thing to do is to not solve their problem because you're afraid of inconveniencing them to make sure that you solve their problem or help them solve their own problem.
Wow. That requires some unpacking, Sean.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It is. And that's the stuff that, like, those are the moments in my life that I remember somebody helping me with. And I've never been in the situation where I needed a doctor to do it for me because I haven't been. But I imagine that there's a list of patients you've seen over the years and clinicians who have come to you for mentorship and how they can develop their skill set, who can go back to the conversation that they had with Craig Liebenson where he told me this and that changed everything for me. And that's not happening over a text message. So I'm curious what led you to getting into the seminar game, the teaching of your skills on a road show. You don't have to travel anywhere. People would come to you if you said, all of our seminars are now in LA, but you go to New York, you go upstate, you're all over the place teaching this stuff. Why?
Well, I think I got something very, I feel very blessed because for whatever reason, I studied philosophy undergrad. I was very experimental with my drug use in high school. Mm-hmm. And I've always been very curious. And as a student, I didn't go to chiropractic school to become a chiropractor. I went to chiropractic school to be an alternative medicine healthcare professional.
Interesting.
And I was very fortunate that I got exposed to soft tissue modalities at a very early stage. I had a classmate who was an athletic trainer. He taught us taping. And I was very skeptical. I felt that chiropractic adjustments as a panacea is somewhat dubious, and was very lucky to be exposed to two of my mentors, Dr. Carol Levin and Professor Vladimir Yanda from Prague, who are neurologists, when I was barely, finishing my first year of chiropractic school. And I invited them, and they were behind the Iron Curtain back then. I invited them to come to me. And as soon as the Berlin Wall fell, I was in Prague. And so I started bringing people over to Prague. And that was, in the 90s. And, ever since then, I think what I saw is what you asked me about in the very beginning, which is, we're in this landscape where the system is broken. What people are learning is not just antiquated, it's actually evidence discordant. And yet knowledge translation is horrible.
I don't know what that means, yeah. Evidence discordant.
Low value care is ubiquitous.
I see.
The status quo is broken. What we're seeing is things that are debunked. We're seeing mythology being passed off as science and as the standard of care. And so there's a great need to challenge the status quo. And it's hard. It's not just about cognitive dissonance. It's much more than that. It's all the things that you were asking about before and talking about. There's a lot of vested interest. There's what people learn in school. There's what the clinic you work in, what they're expecting from you. There's what patients are expecting. There's what you get paid for. So no wonder knowledge translation is very poor. We see that the speed by which evidence discordant care is being de-implemented is horrifically slow. And it's like, people's heads are in the sand. And so there's a great need. And so I'm passionate about this, Sean. And so I'm happy to go to Australia. As soon as I was allowed to, I wanted to fulfill a commitment to go to Sydney, and then went to Melbourne. I've been to China many times. I've been all over, and it's a privilege for me. I feel honored to be able to go and meet with trainers, physios, sports scientists, chiropractors, and share with them the positive health idea that people have within them the ability to be resilient, using your word. The body is built to last. It's not built to break. Contrary to what most chiropractors say about you're out of alignment, what most soft tissue people say, your fascia is this or that, what most surgeons say, you have degeneration or a torn this or that. We know the false positive rate for all those things is through the roof in healthy asymptomatic people. So it's time for us to upskill and to reconceptualize our own beliefs, and therefore also pass that along to the people that are coming to us so that they can live their best life.
Yeah. I wrote an article one time that I don't remember exactly what the title was, but the principle of the article was that you don't have a disc problem. Someone told you have a disc problem, but what if I told you this? And the content was about the idea that what you were describing, the false positives, when studies after study after study that demonstrates, if we polled 1,000 people and asked them, do you have any back pain? And we only looked at the MRIs of the people who said no, we would still find a 50% incidence rate of disc degeneration or disc bulge or disc herniation.
We need to share that news.
Yeah.
Because people aren't getting that message. That's not on a banner.
No, but it's not on a banner because it doesn't sell. Right? It's kind of like
it doesn't sell a service that people make money off.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It almost feels like for the same reason that during COVID, the government wasn't telling everybody if this would be a great time for you to try to lose 20 pounds. This would be a great time for you to start eating healthy, going outside into the sun, exercising, even if it's just going for a walk. Instead, it was take this shot, buy these masks, and fine. I'm not here to, judge whether that was efficacious or not. What I'm here to judge is why didn't we tell them about the other things that we know have efficacy, whether for this or something else? They have time now.
Another missed opportunity.
But I think it's because it doesn't sell. There's no money in go outside and go for a walk. No one gets paid.
That's why I travel. That's why I travel, because we're up against the man, Sean. And I, in my bones, I'm a rebel. Mm-hmm. And being up against the man is something that gives me fuel. Now, whether that's my ego, I don't know. But I love debunking the myths. I love being a skeptical optimist, mm-hmm. and getting in the weeds and helping people to see things as they actually are, outside of their blinders, whether it's other professionals or it's the people that come to see me as patients.
When you travel, you're not a prolific social media user. You're not sitting there with a few million followers, with a media crew. That's not you. How are you filling a seminar in Australia?
I don't know. I don't know.
So here's
my dad, Sean, was in advertising, and I almost went to work, for him after Cairo school, or before Cairo school, after undergrad. But I didn't. That wasn't really what motivated me. And I just remembered one thing that my dad said, and that is content is king. And I think that in the long haul, if you establish credibility and you put out you put out good content. You're not just following the latest hype. The 3 best exercises for fill in the blank. I think that gains traction with people. And again, if I go back to Ryan Chow, Ryan doesn't have a lot of followers either, but I think the followers that he has, they're high value.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true for sure. What I meant there was, and this is a selfish ask of me, right? You schedule a seminar in Sydney. Then what? Like, are you then posting on your Instagram, hey, I'll be in Sydney, sign up if you want, and hoping for the best?
Usually I get requests to go.
Okay. So someone's there.
If I get a request and there's a good host, then if it feels legit, then I'll go.
Okay. And what do
I don't really, like Greg Lehman is on Twitter, doing a lot of promotion, and he has like 50,000 Twitter followers, so he can go on a European tour. Tim Gabbett seems like he's never home in Australia. It seems like he's just gallivanting from team to team and clinic to clinic and gym to gym on his world tour. I don't know the answer to your question. I just share what I do, and it's groups come usually. 30 to 100, 110 people will attend a course. I think these days there's a lot of saturation, and I like smaller groups. So 30 to 40 is a sweet spot. And we get this beautiful mix. I don't know how it happens, but it's almost always about a third trainers, a third physios, and a third chiros. And in different countries, there may be osteopaths or exercise physiologists or kinesiologists. But it's great that we get to sit together and learn from each other. I'm not teaching. I mean, when I have a program, it's a collaboration. And the community is interacting. We've evolved a model where there's a lot of whiteboarding, and somebody in the group sees a lot of postmenopausal women, and somebody sees a lot of pre and postpartum women, and somebody sees a lot of youth, and somebody sees a lot of seniors, somebody sees a lot of back, somebody else sees a lot of runners, and we're whiteboarding. And then we do a lot of gamification. So it's a lot of fun stuff. We're learning a lot about modern skill acquisition and how to make training fun. And then everything is really about principles. And I think that is why people come back to the courses, because a lot of people will take the courses. I'll see people that have taken the course 20 times. And wow, I think it's because people realize that it's not about a technique. It's about it's about the principles, and it's about learning the science, which is always being updated. They see that I will tell people what things I've changed. Like I'm probably one of the pioneers of corrective exercise. I don't believe in corrective exercise anymore.
Well, is it that you now believe all exercise is corrective of something?
I think the idea of people needing to be fixed is an idea that we need to put to rest.
Mm-hmm. They're not broken.
They're not broken. No, because what triggers amplification of symptoms or activity intolerance is multifactorial. It's complex, which means we have a lot of options, which means there isn't just one fix. It gets back to the SNAP. So smoking, nutrition, alcohol, physical activity, stress, social participation, and sleep. Which of these things are your triggers? Mm-hmm. Which of these things are upstream triggers? So somebody may not have talked about sleep when I ask them about sleep, but by the end of the session, they're saying they have, 6 dogs that they sleep with, and one of them weighs, 150 pounds, and they can't get comfortable, and that bothers their back. But when I asked them it in a binary way in the beginning, no, sleep is fine.
Right. So when you do a seminar, how much of what you are going over in the seminar is physical work in terms of, this is how we do this exercise. It should feel like this. It should look like this. Coach it like this. Try it. Go ahead. Go around. Find how different cues work for you. All that kind of stuff. And how much of it is you're not asking the question, to find out what it is that you need to know to be able to ask the appropriate question in response to teach the person to teach themselves.
Oh, that's a great one. So in gamification, or another term for this is the constraints-led approach. We create the environment. So the person is asked to do a task, and we can manipulate the constraints of the environment so that the task looks better. We want the person to problem solve for themselves. So if a person is doing a squat and we don't like the shape, angle, or position of that squat, the good coach isn't going to tell the person, oh, I want you to brace your core. I want you to have your back more vertical. What the good coach is going to do is going to move them again towards a wall. So now they auto-regulate and they problem solve on themselves and develop a more vertical position during their squat. Because that will be more sticky. When a person figures it out for themselves, it'll stash in their subconscious. If you tell the person what to do, in the moment, they'll have the skill act, but it won't transfer. There'll be no residual adaptation. So we do a lot of gamification. We do a lot of problem solving. It's also more fun. And in between all of the whiteboarding and the group interactions and the discussions, like every 20 minutes, people can only handle so much of that as far as their cognitive bandwidth. We start to break out all of our skill workshops or skill labs, and it progresses through a weekend. So we're going through a movement prep, and then we're going through general physical preparation or progressive resistance exercise. And we're kind of like cascading it and interspersing it with discussion so that, people are not just sitting passively listening.
Mm-hmm. What's an example of a constraint that you would play?
Well, the wall. So Pavel Tsatsouline uses the wall for teaching, let's say, a snatch.
With a kettlebell.
The person is casting with their arm, the bell. It could be a mechanism of injury for the shoulder. So he'll say, the wall shall be your coach. Face the wall. Now, clean the bell.
Mm-hmm.
And you now bring it inside like a good Olympic lift, like a snatch. You don't want the arms out. You want the arms in, and then you catch. Mm-hmm. Same with a baseball player. Like one of the oldest tricks in the book for teaching an 8-year-old how to not to cast with their arms and lose the power from the big muscles is to be against a fence and swing the bat. Obviously, the kid isn't going to hit the fence with the bat, so they learn to keep the hands inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The key to this is either having a really good general contractor who will fix the wall every time, or a durable wall. I've done when I was growing up, the baseball swing was something that I did. And I put a few holes in a wall. It was meant to be done on the fence, and I would go into the basement and practice. And I've done
well worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've done the Olympic lifting stuff also with a barbell, not with a kettlebell, but I like what you're doing there. Now, are you teaching them use the wall, or are you asking them identify a constraint that could change this movement without you having to coach it?
So I've been with Sue Falzoni at Perform Better, and I remember where she asked the group, how could you change the environment for this hip hinge or this squat so that it would drive different behaviors, and then let people come up on their own with different ways to change the environment. So, we could do like a deficit deadlift. We could just go on a step. We can go against a wall. There's so many options for all these things. And then, just using different tools, different implements allow for different patterns. At the end of the day, the goal is to give people a positive experience with movement. And we want there to be some transfer to their life. So people, if they're afraid of failing, they have a negative experience with movement. So we need, as coaches, to have a lot of tricks, a lot of arrows in our quiver, so that we can drive success as quickly as possible.
Well, what I think that you're doing there that should be celebrated is you're teaching people to fish instead of putting the bait on the line and dropping it into the water for them. When you show up at a seminar, you could say, here are 7 constraints that you could use to change this movement. And that would give people one experience. What you're saying you do is you show up and you say, come up with a constraint that would coach this movement without you having to say a word. And now what happens is the people have to understand what's the change that I'm actually trying to elicit. What are the environmental factors that are contributing to that being allowed right now? If I change this, let's see if it changes the movement. And I imagine there is experimentation in the room with you where they try a constraint and it doesn't work. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to try a different constraint. And if they do not experience that failure, then they will always wonder what else they might be able to do. Is Craig just telling me the things that he thinks are best, or are there other things to do? You didn't do that. You said, I'm not the teacher here. You're the teacher. I'm giving you the subject.
You're right.
And you're going to teach
You're
it.
right. You're right. I want you to teach with me next time I teach. You're giving me great ideas, but this is all very Socratic.
Mm-hmm.
It is. People are empowered that are attending my courses. They have the ability to learn, and if I just shove information at people, it's a broken way of teaching.
Well, what do you think of somebody trying to teach a group fitness class to a group of individuals in the same manner that you teach professionals to teach individuals? So let me give you a what if this. What if somebody's running a group class in which they're doing kettlebell swings or they're doing kettlebell snatches or whatever the case might be? Is it responsible? Is it smart? I don't know what the right word is, but is it that to tell all of your clients, this is what it's going to look like? I want you to go create an environment that constrains you to having to do it like this. Figure it out for yourself. Is that a smart thing for someone to do?
Well, certain things like kettlebell swings are advanced skills like Olympic lifting. And generally speaking, with novices, we're going to do other things. So if the swing is really a hinge, then we're probably going to do some hinges. But a hinge itself is a skill. Like everybody knows what a squat is. They may not do a good squat. They may suck at squats. They may slouch, slump, stoop, whatever. But most people don't even know what a hinge is. So swing is a real advanced skill. Mm-hmm. But in a group, there is this question all the time, and we could ask it about CrossFit. If you're chasing high volume, if you're chasing advanced skills in a group setting, how much bad technique are you going to tolerate? And what is safe? Mm-hmm. And I think what we're seeing is the business of CrossFit is leveling up in that they like to have on-ramps for people that are new before they let them into the group. And the same thing we've seen in the kettlebell gyms, that before you can come in and do the class, you're going to have to do some sort of small group tutorial or one-on-one until you pass a certain test. So it depends upon the skill. Now, if you're going to do animal flow, hey, let's all have at it. Mm-hmm. And when I'm teaching my courses, I start with body weight exercises. We start with what we call the fundamental movement literacies, which are our movement prep. And these are all safe. So there's no barrier to them. And we can experiment away.
I'm trying to make a decision about whether to split the hair of how CrossFit is bringing people into their gyms. I'm gonna skip it because I think it doesn't feed the conversation we're having. What I will say is I believe that there's a lot of conflict within that entity itself, the entity and those who are providing it to their students about what is the best way to do it, which indicates that I don't know that anybody has actually thought it all the way through, identified who
but they're that's because they're a victim of their own success.
In a way,
they've done this amazing job of building community, and now they're being forced to evolve, which is the natural order of things. So there's some disruptions happening in their midst, and we'll see where it all goes. But I mean, look at, for instance, women. Women. We now acknowledge that strong is the new skinny.
Yeah.
And how is that possible? Well, a lot of that is possible because of CrossFit.
That's true. They definitely have the cultural advances that I believe CrossFit is in large part responsible for. Are of significant magnitude, and we need to respect it. I'm only talking about what an on-ramp should be. My brain went into my business.
Hey, it's tough because they're doing Olympic lifting, and Olympic lifting is a skill. And most S&C coaches don't like to use Olympic lifting. They feel it takes too long to train the skill for an athlete. A professional athlete can't get injured training.
Right.
You get fired, as Mike Boyle said. So they're definitely, they're hamstrung in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I was recently who was I recently talking to about Mike Boyle? Damn. Oh, Don Saladino. I was with Don Saladino talking about Mike Boyle, and he was describing how, Mike Boyle was pointing out to all these other people in the audience, and he's like, if you ask the average person on the street, who would you rather get you strong? The bodybuilder over there, or the guy who just, has good genetics, or me? 99 out of 100 people are choosing that guy. And the one who's choosing me is the only one who knows who both of us are. And it was an interesting, I paraphrased. I hope I didn't ruin anything that Mike said to Don, but you follow. So somebody comes to one of your first principles of movement seminars. It was successful for them if what?
It's successful for them if Monday morning they are inspired and they're empowering their clients and patients to push themselves to use higher dosages of resistance than they thought possible before.
So it sounds like you're helping them take the regulator off for their patients and their clients.
100%. So if they've been underdosing activity and exercise, and they now feel, as a trainer or a clinician, they now feel more confident that they can take that governor off, and that they can look back and go, I was being too careful. I was treating people like they were fragile. Yeah. I wasn't doing what it took to build resilience, to violate their expectations, so people realize that the road to recovery is through exposure to enough stress stimulus to actually cause adaptation.
Mm-hmm. I imagine in order to do that, they have to be inoculated from fear some way over the 2 days.
100%.
What do you think most commonly leads to that inoculation?
Wow, what a great question, Sean.
Thanks.
I think that the whole weekend with me and my team is very challenging for people. The ideas that we are presenting are not what anybody would expect going into the seminar, no matter what objectives we throw up there on the website. For instance, a lot of people still think that everything should be tied to biomechanics, and in reality, we really feel that the psychosocial aspects are probably the biggest levers to pull on, because it's people's beliefs. If you believe that you're fragile, that is going to hold you back more than anything else. And sometimes learning about biomechanics, while important, actually makes you feel more fragile.
Yeah, because you're worried about perfection.
You're worried about perfection, and we like to say it is incorrect to correct. So we want people to realize that the body has this incredible redundancy. I think I heard you say before, there are many roads to Rome. There are so many options. There is not one way for a baseball pitcher to throw a baseball, or a hitter to hit a baseball, or a golfer to swing a golf club. There are certain non-negotiables. One non-negotiable is practice. And another non-negotiable is failure. But in terms of swing type and swing path and all these things, there are very few things that we need to teach that a person wouldn't figure out on their own through trial and error and through failure.
Yeah. Well, I want to express my gratitude for the kind of work that you're doing in the industry and the way that you speak about it without governing for political correctness, because I believe it's essential that if we're going to move this thing forward, people are going to need to be able to see that you might not agree with everything that I say. You might say some of the stuff that Sean says is utter nonsense. Okay, that's okay. Who else are you going to look to? I want them to look at you, and I want them to say, well, Craig Liebenson says 80% of things that I think are great that I'm learning from, there's 20% utter nonsense over here too. Fine. Who else? And if we can create a group, not a formal group, but a level of professional who's prepared to go through the wall and get a little bit bloody. I was talking to Kelly Starrett last week about my gratitude to him for going through the wall and putting this stuff online every day and getting bloody, getting the comments that were like, that's dumb, that's stupid, that's not physical therapy, you're bastardizing, all of that kind of stuff. So that when I started going through the wall, I could get little scrapes, but no concussions. You know what I mean?
He took the arrows.
Yeah, he sure did.
He's the pioneer.
Yes. We need the next wave to keep innovating on the previous and the existing. And we need people to look at all of us. I believe I'd like to put myself in the category of we can agree on a lot of things and disagree on other things and find ways to innovate on what we are doing collectively through the work that others are doing that we're not. And that allows the audience to say, I'm going to choose my own adventure through these other people who have gone through walls for me. And I love that you do it, and I appreciate that you do it.
Thank you. I think it's my ADHD.
Perhaps.
I get bored easily. And so, I'm constantly challenging myself. That's the philosopher in me. And, probably one of the things that people get in the course, because I know you're asking about this, is they get the value of humility. Mm-hmm. Like nobody has the answers. In fact, the person who has the answers is probably the person you should be most suspicious of.
Yes.
And we don't have the answers. That's why our rapport with our patients comes from a place of radical genuineness. We're there to be with them, to help them through this, to help to identify where a person's identity is now being kind of compressed and stifled. And then to show them that their goals are our goals, and then to reveal to them, to unveil a process by which this can occur. I know James Clear talks about how, it's not just about outcomes. It's not just about the process. It's about their identity. To really hear their story, to validate their lived experience, this is the beginning. And if we can connect with people at that level, then the compassion just drives. It becomes the fuel for the whole journey forward. And it's not a transactional thing. It's not episodic. That's where, to your earlier question, the reimbursement system, the idea that the best physical therapist, chiropractor gets people better in the fewest visits, that's a lie. Mm-hmm. This is a long-term relationship. We're living in an era where people are going to live 20 or 30 years of their life with disability. Well, I'm not accepting that. I think that there are enough blue zones out there with healthy centenarians that this is the model. And what defines somebody who is 90 and not frail is, can you squat? What defines a 70-year-old who doesn't have a high fall risk? Can you get up and down from the floor? Can you lunge? Well, then why the heck are we telling 50-year-olds not to squat and lunge and sending them off for joint replacements? And I'm all for the arthroplasties, but let's set them up for success by training the muscles. The muscles are bioplastic. And so this is the most beautiful thing of all, is that we realize there is this inherent bioplasticity, like cortical plasticity, and we can keep learning so people can reconceptualize. We can change our role in the definition of what a chiropractor or a physio is, and we can help people to feel, using your word, more durable or resilient. That is the most exciting thing in the world. And it's more needed today than ever before because people are living longer. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do with all this time?
Hopefully something productive. Maybe travel the world and tell people how they earned their time.
And do the things they love.
Yes.
So it gets back to their identity. Do you want to be playing pickleball when you're 80 or tennis? Absolutely.
Yeah. The identity thing is a huge thing. One of the things that we like to discuss with people is you don't have a bad back. What do you mean you have a bad back? Which part? The whole thing? All the time? No matter what you do? So you can't shake that.
Mine's a lemon. It came out of the factory. I got one of the bad ones, a rotten apple.
Right. My glutes don't activate. What do you mean they don't activate? What do you mean they don't activate? These are things that people are told, and then they start to believe. And they don't have to be told directly. You could see it online and be like, oh, maybe that's my problem. I have that. And now what happens is you start to identify as that thing. And it's much harder to change your problem. Right? It's harder to change your problem if your problem is you. Instead of something that irritates you when you do X, Y, Z, well, that's easy to solve. You don't have to change everything about you to change that.
These messages from social media or friends or family or doctors or physios or chiros are nocivic.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the reconceptualization starts from us as professionals. And I think that's what distinguishes a professional from just somebody who's learned a bunch of techniques.
Professional from a technician.
Yeah, and Dr. Levitt said the don't be a slave of the methods. The method should serve the goal. And the goal, it goes back to that James Clear idea of identity. The goal is the goal. The goal is the person's goal.
Yeah.
Well, and how do they see themselves? So that you're right, Sean. They come in, I just want to get out of pain. And that's their right, and that's the contract. They're seeing chiro, a physio, ortho, I've got a trip coming up to Scotland. I paid for it. I didn't insure it. I got to play golf. What am I supposed to do? Blah, blah, blah. Get me out of pain. Absolutely. We're not going to say, well, let's get upstream of the problem. That's not what we're saying, but while we're doing palliative things, we're planting seeds about, I'll show people pictures from Rachel's office of, well, which of these 10 items do you think can actually be triggers that can amplify your pain? And they go, oh yeah, sleep. I haven't been getting sleep. All right. Well, now we get to talk about some of these upstream factors, because I showed them a visual of a list of 10 things, and they circled these ones that are things that aren't part of the quick relief, the quick fix, but are drivers of making them less, again, using your word, reactive and more durable in the future.
Would you share that visual with me? I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Rachel Zoffness, she talks about the recipe is always bio, psycho, and social. Mm-hmm. It's never just one. And then there's a list of 10 things that can trigger amplification of pain. And then there's a list of 10 things that can de-escalate pain. And they're all things that are in the person's sphere to influence, not easily. Like, it's not easy if you have insomnia to sleep better, but we want to recognize that the lack of sleep is driving inflammation, which is driving sensitivity, which is lowering tolerance, and it can tip you over the edge. Mm-hmm. And it's not just your MRI.
Yeah. Dr. Liebenson, where can people find you if they want to learn more? Because I hope that they do.
On Instagram, Craig Liebenson. On Twitter, Craig Liebenson. They can email me at craigliebensondc@gmail.com. They can go to firstprinciplesofmovement.com and find out about the courses. The hardest part is spelling my name.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
You'll share that.
Yeah, we'll put it all in the show notes. They can click it. Highlight. Click.
People can DM me on Instagram. I know that's a popular thing these days. They're not likely to find me doing anything on TikTok. I don't understand these things. But social media is important because there's too much garbage on social media. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be some other voices of people, like you say, who don't have, a million or 100,000 or 50,000 followers, but are just sharing information from their experience. And I try to share what I'm doing with my patients. And a lot of people say, oh, that exercise looks bad. And so, I'll show an athlete who does something perfectly, and they go, oh, you only treat athletes. Like, you can't win. Right. but
right.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I heard an expression from Tom Bilyeu, he was talking about people will throw stones at you. And if you want to become great, you have to take all of those stones to the face, because every once in a while you bend down to pick up one of those stones and you find out it's actually a piece of gold. But you have to take a bunch of stones before you can find the gold.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Doc, I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Sean, I appreciate you having me. I was curious for a long time what the podcast would be like, and this was not at all like anything I expected. And I went into it, blind. And I told you before that I appreciate it being a little bit raw. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have like the questions beforehand and all that. And I've learned a lot. I'm going to do some research now based on some of the things that you've said. I love this experience, and I want to thank you.
My pleasure. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life podcast. Please remember, give us a hand, rate it, review it wherever you listen to shows. We are on a mission to humanize the healthcare industry by professionalizing the fitness industry to empower the individual to live a life unlimited by the way that their body looks, feels, or performs. If you are inspired by that mission and want to jump on the wagon, find us anywhere. Active Life Professional on Instagram, Active Life RX on Instagram. Come to me personally at Dr. Sean Pastuch. We want to welcome you onto the train. We want you to be a part of the mission. We want to offer you the opportunity to pursue this right alongside us. We're inspired by your effort, and we hope to help you in your journey. Turn pro.